Hi, I'm Jessie Budzinski. I'm an assistant department chair at Purdue Global, and I'm here today with Tyler Sorg, who is a full-time faculty member in our communication department. And Tyler, if you don't mind getting us started by just sharing some of your experience in the communication field.
Yeah, so for the last between 5 and 8 years, I've taught communication classes. But before that, I was in sales for about 8 years. I worked in international sales, manufacturing sales, and even retail sales, and that kind of sparked me into getting into communication scholarship. And I got my PhD kind of based on my interest of looking at how organizations function through communication. And actually, from that interest, I sparked my own consulting company where I consult on communication practices, fundamentals. I specialize in sexual harassment, and my experience with that is I've consulted with groups like the Army, local areas around Indiana and Missouri, and my experience and knowledge of communication, and also from the sales industry, allowed me to see the best and worst practices of communication in the private sector.
Right, right. So what do you think, if a student was watching this, what would you say to a student in terms of why a degree in communication is important?
Here's what I tell everybody, and I truly mean this with a genuine, I guess subjective, but objective passion, is that if you're going to get into a business world, when you get to that job, they're going to teach you business, or teach you the practices of, for example, if you're selling cars, they're going to teach you how to sell cars, right? That product. But what you cannot learn is the communication practices that allow you to create a vehicle of transmission to get that sale, to get that HR, to whatever it may be. And I truly believe that communication is the most important thing a person can bring to a company. And you can look at engineers or doctors or nurses, and if you ask anybody, who's your favorite doctor? Who's your favorite professor, favorite nurse? It's the ones that speak to you, the ones that communicate with you. And I truly believe that, especially in the modern digitized world, that this right here is a dying, rare skill that a lot of people kind of have forgotten. So I really believe that communication allows you to really catapult yourself above the other, employers. For example, I had a girl in my class last term tell me that she applied for a job, and there were 1,000 applicants on that in that one day. And I told her, I was like, hey, with your communication skills, if you can just get the one-on-one, I promise you'll get the job, because she has that tool set to leverage herself amongst the crowd. Right. And you cannot always learn that once you're there. But you have a strong foundation from our classes like interpersonal comm or any kind of case study class here. We prepare you to really adapt and to succeed in any context you'll be put in.
Yeah, that's a great example. And actually, as you were sharing that, I was thinking, this video is going to be viewed by students who obviously are in the communication, working towards a communication degree, but also a lot of students take communication courses as electives.
Yes.
So you kind of mentioned that, but could you speak to that a little bit, how important that is, I think, for so many different fields?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. I teach 206 here, interpersonal communication. And most of my students are not communication scholars, but they're ABA, they're therapists, psychology, majors like that. And imagine having the knowledge of the psyche and, human services, but also having a little bit of a background in communication. You've now made yourself the best therapist a patient may see, because you can build that connection. And if you don't have a communication fundamental base, the rest of it's irrelevant, because you cannot get your message across. So I really believe that in any field, law, criminal justice, therapy, if you can add courses like this to your arsenal, you are much more effective in that organization, but you're bringing a better service to your potential customers, clients, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And then what about for students who might not be sure, what could they do with a degree in communication?
Oh, this is another of my selling points. I think that it's up to you, really. And I tell them all the time, communication is a very paradoxical thing, because it's so broad, which can be a bad thing as far as like if you're going to be a nurse, you're going to be a nurse, right? But communication, it opens the door for you for any type of field you want to get into, from public relations to marketing to sales to HR. I have people that do, like writing, online writing and stuff like that. So the benefit of communication is that you can kind of make your own path once you get in here. Now, sure, we have classes that are structured and, really tailored towards the curriculum of PG, but you can kind of pick and choose how you want to bring in your own interest, your own passion, and you couple that with communication. Is pretty much you're building up your own skills in the time that you're here at PG. When you get into the workplace, you're ready to go. You have to get the ground running.
Right. That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay. Kind of a personal question for you in terms of your teaching. What do you enjoy the most about teaching?
Oh, that's a question I could talk about for hours. I love teaching. It's for the first thing I'll tell you is that I've never felt like teaching is a job. It's something I am so lucky to do every single day of my life. I love teaching, and that can take you to routes of informing and being an educator. But what my biggest joy is, it's watching somebody get better and watching them really buy into my class or your class, anybody's class, and you see them actually want to get better. And watching that progress to me is worth the years of studying, the years of teaching, the years of the bad classes that we've all had. But that alone just makes everything worthwhile. Watching somebody grow and truly see their potential. And once they recognize that, they can just flourish in anything they want to get into.
Right. That's great. Your passion for teaching and for your students is very obvious. Yeah, it's great.
It's probably my biggest downfall is that I care about them too much. So like when they, leave me or have, things happen in their life, I really take it. It bothers me because, you're with somebody. I've had students in my classes for the last, 2 or 3 years. When they leave,
Right.
it's like, man, you're like, not to be like my child, like you watch somebody grow and like get into the
Right.
world, and a part of you kind of goes with them. And you think about that time in your life when you were, a few years ago teaching for the first couple of times, like, man, we grew together. And
Right.
it's just a very surreal phenomenon that not people get to experience in their jobs.
Right. I love to hear that. Last question for you. What advice would you give to somebody who's watching this video?
I think the best advice I've ever gotten about career or anything like that, it's like, don't chase the money, chase what you're really passionate about. And this is such a cliche saying about, if you find what you love, you have to work a day in your life, blah, blah. But that really is an important aspect of, you wake up in the morning and you do your job all day long. If you hate that job, it's gonna be miserable for you. So find something that you're actually passionate about, that you're interested in, but you can see yourself bringing a service to that field and also the people who will be touched by that field.
Right. Thank you. That's great advice, Tyler. I appreciate you taking the time to do this.